Hello, this is John Monson, your host of Rural Ruckus Radio and Podcast. Welcome today. We're glad to have another guest with us today, and it is none other than the Hall of Fame broadcaster Lynn Kettleson on Linder Farm Network, who I've worked with for 25 years, Lynn. I want to say something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, welcome. We are so glad to have you on our show today, and for our viewers to get a chance to actually see and hear the voice behind the great face that I've gotten to know over all of these years, and a great friend of mine. I'm really glad that you're here with us today. This is going to be a lot of fun because we're going to get to talk a little bit about, I think some of our viewers maybe know a little bit less about you, but are going to get a chance to hear your voice, and it's going to be recognizable to them, and then they're going to get a chance to understand a little bit more about not where that career has been so much, but where we're heading into the future, and what rural and agricultural radio looks like into the future, and where those opportunities lie. But let's start a little bit with Lynn, introducing you to our viewers here. Tell us a little bit about when this all began. It's been a little while ago that you got started in all this.
It has been. Actually, I'm a farm boy from Iowa. Grew up on a farm in eastern Iowa around Cedar Rapids. 6 kids, family farm, livestock, crops, and all that kind of thing. Went to Iowa State University, and first job was at KMA Radio in Shenandoah, Iowa for 2 years, and then came to Minnesota and set up a 4-station network for the Linder family at that time. I named it the Linder Farm Network. Now we're on 30 stations around the state. So it's been a fun growth period. I've based my career on information to farmers to help them farm successfully, getting to know farmers, going to literally hundreds of thousands of meetings, as you have, have over the years. And really, it's just been a kind of a slow growth for our network now, where we're reaching probably close to 70% of the farmers in the state. So it's great. And, the interesting thing about farm radio and podcast, of course, are very important. More farmers listen to radio now than they did 20 years ago.
That's amazing. You'd think it would be just the reverse.
You would.
Why is that trend remaining so strong for radio?
Rural areas are different than city areas as far as media usage. And radio is sort of the unofficial social media. People get up in the morning, they go to the local cafe, the farmers do, they gather, they go to their meetings, and you put on extension meetings over the years. And radio is just part of their life. The people they listen to, the news they get, the weather they get, and farm news, it's all just part of the fabric of rural Minnesota and rural America. So it's interesting. We do research year after year thinking, okay, how does radio fit into all this? And the real mix is to take podcast like you're doing here very successfully, and then mixing that with radio. It's the perfect mix. So I'm still excited about the future of our industry, and I think there's a bright future ahead.
There is. There's no question about it. You've been very successful at it. In fact, I think you were inducted into the Hall of Fame here in Minnesota. When was that?
I think that was 3 years ago, something like that.
Yeah. And you deserved it. There were others that were also brought into the Hall of Fame for broadcasting as well. But I've known you as the voice of agriculture here in Minnesota for as long as I've known you. For the 25 years that we've had an opportunity to work together. And not only have you become I think more than a credible voice for agriculture, and you've really navigated the issues, all of the ups and the downs and the sideways and every which way that agriculture has gone. You've kind of seen it all, but through it all, I think that, our relationship, we've become friends, and we begin to understand kind of the dynamics of agriculture and the personalities at play in the state over time. And those realities keep changing. I think that's the one thing I've noticed. I bet some stories stand out to you over the years, Lynn. Anything that has sort of stood out in your mind that's like, wow, I'll never forget that moment?
There is one that's kind of a poignant moment for me that people always ask, well, what's the highlight of your career? And I actually had a farmer come up to me who said, I was contemplating suicide until I listened to your farm shows, and you were talking positive, things are going to change, they're going to get better. And he said, I changed my mind.
Wow.
And I thought, how can anything be better than that?
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. Now, I've had interesting trips. one anecdote that kind of stands out. I went to the old Soviet Union back when it was collective farms. And we went out to a farm, and all around the edge of that farm was farm machinery that was broken or all tangled up with weeds that they simply had drug off and quit using. There were dozens and dozens of implements. And the collective farmers were standing out in the middle of a potato field, and the truck that was hauling the potatoes was stuck in a rut. Not from mud, it was just stuck in a rut. And they were trying to figure out, there was probably 20 of these collective farmers, how do we get it out? What would be simple? Yeah. All of you just get behind it and push it out.
Yeah.
And they couldn't figure that out.
Wow.
So they finally came up with this idea of backing the tractor and the potato planter up against the truck, the planter, to push it out. Well, they did that, and guess what? The potato planter broke.
Wow.
And the truck didn't get out.
Oh, my.
And it just showed to me, if you don't give people the opportunity to think and to be enterprising and to grow their own operation and so on, they lose all of their incentive for individual thought, and they're not creative or innovative, and you just have a bunch of people standing around trying to figure out what to do. And that's why in Russia, collective farms failed so miserably. And now they have private ownership, and they have people that are growing their farms, are getting bigger like we have in the U.S. As soon as you get away from that, you really lose the fabric of what has made America great.
Yeah, great point. There's no doubt about it. And so the future holds a lot of challenge for us, doesn't it? And there's a lot of lessons I think that both of us have learned through our career in agriculture and in serving rural that sort of provides us with a set of principles that guide us as we look forward.
Yeah, and that's what's great about your show.
Yeah.
You're talking rural,
right.
And I think that's very important. There's certainly a connection. Farmers are rural people too. Farmers are people, and they like a lot of the same things that people that live in city do. But we need that connection between farmers, rural, and city. And I think my show appeals to farmers and non-farmers, but you're making that connection in between. I think that's critical.
It is.
It is. And I have people come up to me and say, well, now with organic stuff, isn't that bad for farmers? No, it's great. The more choices we have, organic, whether it's meat or whether it's produce in the store, the more choices that people have and the more they know about their food, the better off we are.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good thing, and I really take my hat off to you for the audience you have here that want to connect with rural Minnesota and rural America.
What's interesting to me, the reason that the show started was, so I learned over my career, 38-year career, that there's a strong voice for agriculture. Now, it can be disparate, it can be varied, and they may not always agree. Agriculture doesn't always speak with one voice, that's for sure. We know that. I've seen times when it has, but it's been rare. But everybody has a point of view. But agriculture's voice is not lost.
Right.
But rural's voice is. It's not heard. It's not thought of. And the reason that it's important is their interdependence between agriculture and rural communities is so strong. You can't have strong agriculture without a strong rural community. You can't have a strong rural community without a strong agriculture. Both are critical. We know this. And so it takes both. And that's why I like this show, because this is actually putting faces to that connection.
Right.
And that's what we have been over there. The reason that it was so easy to work together is that we have found the importance of that connection. And so over time, when I was the FSA state director, we talked a lot about agriculture. We talked about ag policy. We talked about farm bills. And now we've talked a lot more about rural and the importance of how that works in support of agriculture. So these are some of the things that we're trying to connect. And I think, and I've talked on your show about it. We did Compeer involvement back in the day. We talked about a lot of those key issues and why partnership mattered so much. And I think the truth is that when you work with either it's ag or rural, it's a partnership. It's a team sport. It always has been. It always will be. And the good news is that diversity of thinking brings strength to the industry because you need different points of view to challenge each other and make us all better. And as you look forward, as we think into the future about farm radio and where it's going into the future, what are some of the changes that you're beginning to see Yeah, I can't imagine what it was like in the beginning, but what it looks like into the future. Where are some of the big changes happening, Lynn, that you see as you look forward in radio?
When I started, numbers were very important. The markets, and we still do markets, but markets are available right here on your cell phone.
Yeah.
You can get any numbers you want. What we have to do is interpret what those numbers mean and how they will affect a farmer's bottom line. That's what we have to do. So we have to have analysts on. We have to have stories on that impact farmers' profitability, because at the end of the day, you have to make some money doing this kind of thing. So our involvement has had to include analyzing why things are doing what they're doing. When I started, when we did weather, it was basically for the 4 counties that we served with our 4 stations. We would do local weather. Now, it's important what's going on not only here, but all over the United States, what's going on in South America, what's going on in Ukraine, in Russia, what's going on in China. So our weather has become international because all of that impacts the farmer's bottom line with their prices. The other thing is, how do they market successfully? Back in the day, you would grow corn and soybeans, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but you'd haul them into the elevator and sell them. Now farmers store that grain, and they try to decide, when can I sell it to make the most money? So part of our job is to put the experts out there to help them with those marketing decisions. We're not making the decisions for them, but we're putting information out there for them to farm successfully. So it's evolved a lot. There's no question about it. The other thing I do on the air, I do commentary, and I found out that in anything that we do, 95% of the people agree on almost all the issues. There's only about 5% of the things that we disagree on. So I focus, when I make a commentary, on the things we agree on. When you watch, whether it's whatever network you consume nationally, they focus on what people disagree on. And whether it's Fox or CNN or MSNBC or ABC, that's all you see there. So I want to talk about in agriculture, okay, what can we agree on? What can we get something done? And that's what you do too. I know we've talked about rural hospitals, rural daycare. Those are huge issues in rural America. We have to do something about those. We have to keep people living in rural areas.
Right. Yeah. We want to talk a lot about rural infrastructure. We want to talk about what makes rural businesses succeed. What do the succession plans look like? We want to talk about future of daycare. We want to make sure that school districts have a voice in all of it too. Rural communities have Main Street issues. And so that's what our commentary is on here.
And nobody talks about them,
That's the problem.
You're the guy talking, and you have been that voice on the Linder Farm Network for how many years we were been doing these shows, talking about it. And what I think is so cool is you built partnerships in that effort, whether it's down at Hormel in Austin, we did a broadcast down there, or whether it's hospitals that you basically have gotten built, or whether it's county fairs that you've been involved with. So many really neat things. And if you can carry that on, you're really doing something.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. You have been at Farm Fest for many, many years. I mean, I've been out there with you many of those years as well, up on stage with you. When you look back at that, so when you walk through Farm Fest, you see a lot of equipment, of course, and there's been forums as well. And there's been politicians have come across that stage, so many of. So what are some of the things, what are some of the changes there that you've seen? And as you look forward, what are some of the issues? And as you look at equipment, how is that changing? What are some of your views now as you kind of walk through Farm Fest? It's sort of an indicator or a barometer of what's happening in agriculture over time. Anything that you notice there?
Well, first off, on the politician front, I've known every governor since Wendy Anderson. Personally, they've all been my friends. And whether they're Democrat, Republican, or even independent, remember Jesse Ventura. Every one of those people was pro-agriculture and very, very nonpartisan on ag issues. That has changed in, I would say, the last 6 to 8 years And I think that's very unfortunate because so many of these governors, they're cheerleaders for agriculture.
They are.
That's, in my opinion, what they should be. So that's the first thing I've seen a change is the nonpartisan type of forums that we had have all turned into, you're either on this side or you're on that side. The other thing is how corporate America is starting to view trade shows, and they're making decisions that maybe we're not going to be out at these shows because we're not getting the people that we want. And yet we put on a marketing seminar and we'll get 400 or 500 people. That's the people they want. They want farmers who are very active, who are farming. They don't just want passive farmers that just are coming for the show. So in terms of the trade shows, the Farm Fest, they're still very, very important. You get a lot of rural people, a lot of farmers there, but there's no doubt they face challenges just like everybody else does right now in agriculture.
Yeah. And so as you see some of the equipment, we've noticed some advancements there too, haven't we?
Yeah.
I mean, that's been big change.
I think people don't realize right now, tractors drive themselves.
They do.
Combines drive themselves. In fact, you don't even need a farmer in the cab of either one if you don't want. I mean, they're autonomous.
No.
Now, farmers are typically in the cab of the combine, but you don't have to steer it. It'll just go right down the row all by itself. And I don't think people that live in cities realize that, just how far we've come in technology. And when we farm, we used to farm by the acre. Now we're farming by the square foot. And a field will be all gridded, and they'll look at, okay, soil testing for here. How much do we need to spray here? What do we need to do here? And so they're not wasting spray. It's more efficient, and we're growing more and more food all the time. So farming has changed. It has become so technologically forward. I don't think people can really relate to what's going on out there. It's not a red barn and a tractor anymore.
No, it isn't. And even the large farms, one of the things I've noticed, an interesting trend that I began to see towards the end of my career was how large farms are now investing in diversifying on their farm, trying new things. They're entrepreneurs or agripreneurs is what they really should be called. Yeah. They're willing to test and try growing new crops in new ways. They're okay with traceability, for example. Precision ag has become a part of it. Conservation practices on the farm have become noticeable, I think, everywhere. Just a lot of change. Farmers themselves have always argued that they're relatively sustainable, and so they're investing more in that as well, and they talk more about it too. You hear them speaking more about it. So I think you begin to see a lot of changes over the course of time that reflect consumer trends, is what you see. And I think that's been a real positive for agriculture over time. It isn't just row cropping and that's it. There's a lot more attention paid globally, like you said, and a lot more attention paid to the consumer as well and what their expectations are. So that's been good.
One of the neat trips that we made was to a mung farm up by the Twin Cities that we did a broadcast when you were with Comp here. And boy, was that an eye-opener because of the produce that they are putting out. Right. And we have a similar thing. I live in Owatonna, and there's people that are growing tomatoes, all these vegetable crops in the area. And we're seeing more and more people pop up doing that. I think that's really neat. Yeah, I mean, the more local meat that we can get, we're seeing small meat packers pop up. The more of that, the better.
One of the most interesting points to highlight what you just said, back when we started an equity fund, when Compere, we were going out and recruiting capital to start an equity fund for some of the innovators of agriculture. Yeah. And that would include those that were, into new forms of technology, maybe even new forms of processing. It might have been new crops itself or different ag-related processing products, you name it. When we did that, and we established a $150 million fund, but there was over $10 billion of demand for 150. And when you read the list of all the different enterprises, all the different agripreneurs that were out there, you would scroll for pages and pages and pages, all the people that were looking for money because they had ideas.
Right.
They had the innovations that were going to change the future. A number of them, and the majority of them probably won't succeed. But that was where we represented what the future of agriculture was going to look like, was in that list.
Yeah.
You could see sort of the global perspective of all that was coming in agriculture. And that was really exciting to me to see what the possibility of the future looked like. And it was mind-blowing to see how many incredible ideas were out there, new processes and innovations that were coming our way down the road. But that's how they started. We were just getting a snapshot in time of what that looked like, but it really was emblematic of what we were going to see coming to us in the future. And it plays itself out at Farm Fest. It plays itself out on the radio in the things that you cover. It plays itself out even in the politics that we begin to see. And so the sad part is, as you explained, when we become more partisan through all of it, we sort of lose sight of what really is naturally unifying every single day, that just naturally occurs commonly with every farmer and innovation itself and the future. It looks very much like it's nonpartisan, yet everything seems so partisan. Yeah. And that's a struggle.
And it's unfortunate, but as you said, there are so many of these small operations now, people that are raising chickens out in their barnyard and then selling to the Twin Cities, and eggs. Now, eggs, we have an announcer here at the Linder Farm Network radio station that has some chickens, and he sells eggs locally. Oh, yeah. And some are brown or some are white, or and they're but they're fresh when you get them. And it's just really, really neat. And I think you've been on the front end of all of this. That's what's so cool. You've been preaching this, so to speak, for 20 years. Yeah. And you've seen things change. You've seen success. Yeah. So, again, that you've been an innovator, and I know your partner, Paul, back in the day, had the vision as well.
Paul DeBryan.
Yeah. And it's just really neat to make a difference like that. Yeah,
if you get an opportunity to sort of be given sort of a grid of opportunity, just sort of a white space.
So how did you guys, how did you come up with that? I know you're interviewing me, but I'm used to interviewing you. Yeah. But where did that all come from? Did you guys just sit down and say, we need to come up with ideas to develop rural America and help innovators be successful? How did that ever come about?
Well, that takes a lot. I mean, I gave you one example of that, but it takes many forms, in many shapes, in different ways. We've done some of that locally and regionally with the Initiative Foundation. We've done it with the Community Economic Development Associates, our sponsors of our programs. In fact, and Compeer was really a center point in investing in all of this.
And it was AgStar back in the day.
And it was AgStar back then as well. But there was a law, if you can believe this, Lynn, sitting on the books back in 2002 Farm Bill that actually gave license to be able to make investments like that. But it took 9 years later before Jace Wagner, the current CEO, at that time was the vice president of capital management at AgStar back then, and I had to go out to Washington, D.C., and Jace is an absolute genius. He put together a heat map, and it showed where equity capital was needed in America for the future of agriculture. And he put it in the front of their capital markets team. This is sort of a leadership group of different leaders at USDA. And they looked at it and said, this is amazing. Let's focus on writing the regulations finally after 10 years and get this thing started. Are you interested in beginning a fund somewhere to test this? We said yes. And so we came back home, we recruited more capital, we interviewed people, and we came up with a $150 million fund. And then they went out and recruited and found different opportunities across America. And then we began investing. So there was, again, when I left, it was over a $10 billion fund of opportunity, a pipeline of opportunity that we saw, literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of innovators that were looking for money. We only had $150 million. Now that thing that equity fund is now over $3 billion of available funds, primarily from Farm Credit, but along with other banks and other partners as well. So it takes many different partners in order to make those kinds of things work. But the future of agriculture is dependent on being a partner, on working with others. So they co-invest. Some funds can handle a little bit and other ones handle other parts. So they co-invest. It's a true partnership. That's how it works. It always works that way. Yeah. And it's amazing to me that maybe some haven't realized how important that is, and we'll fight against that. We'll fight and resist against that partnership concept. But it's critical. It's critical to the future to work together in agriculture and rural for it to work. The truth of it is that when we think only locally and not more regionally, we begin to lose focus of the real opportunities ahead of us, because in many cases, there's not critical mass if we only think specifically locally. So we have to begin to work together in order to make it work. So that's one of those opportunities that you've given me on the radio, and that led to this podcast, so we could do this. So when I brought up the idea of something like this, without hesitation, you said, let's go for it. Let's do a podcast, right? And I'm saying the same to you here live today. I think you should do the same for agriculture. You should get your podcast, Lynn. You do an amazing job. Look at how you're doing here today.
Sure.
You're such a great voice. You are the voice of agriculture in Minnesota. And I think that we should get a podcast going. I think that you would do a phenomenal job of telling more of the stories and digging more in depth and so on. So
I got a quick story too.
Yeah.
Are we doing okay for time there? All right. Ethanol, of course, in Minnesota is a huge industry. It's a huge industry around the country. Before there were any ethanol plants in the state, and before there was a Minnesota Corn Growers, which is an association of corn growers to have someone to be their voice, an organization to be their voice. We didn't have any ethanol plants. Well, I helped the then executive director, Don Schlichty of the National Corn Growers, organize the Minnesota Corn Growers through county meetings, and we did free publicity and all that type of thing. And we organized the first couple counties, and then it became statewide. Then Don said they had plans for individual on-farm stills where you could make your own ethanol on your farm, your own alcohol to burn in your vehicles. And so I promoted those plans on the air for free. All the blueprints, how you can actually build a still to make alcohol to burn in your vehicle. And I had hundreds of people that wanted those blueprints. And I had many, many from the Marshall, Minnesota area. The farmers all got these individual plans. And I think they were sitting around at the coffee shop talking about them and laughing. And they said, why don't we just build one big plant? And so they did. They built a plant. And it came from this individual on-farm still. And now, what do we have, 20 ethanol plants in the state? Yeah. Something like that. And so if I can make a difference like that, that impacts not only farmers, but also rural, because the ethanol industry is very, very important. There's a lot of jobs. The state keeps jobs here, keeps fuel prices lower, burns corn. Then I can make a difference in what I'm doing. And that's what I've tried to do over the years. I want to make a difference for agriculture. So, and
you have done that. And so you're not just the voice of agriculture, you're the mobilizer of agriculture in Minnesota.
Try.
Yeah. And you have done a great job. Well, Lynn, thank you for being with us today on the Rural Ruckus Radio podcast. Appreciate having you. Would like to have future conversations as well. We'll catch up with you again. And anyways, if you get the opportunity, figure out an opportunity to do a podcast for Linder Farm Network, I think it would be fantastic. But
that's what we'll do.
Yeah, you bet. And this is John Monson signing off with Rural Ruckus Radio and podcast. Thanks so much for watching today, and we'll be back again.